Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. My name is Heather, and I'm an advanced practice nurse, and I own a wellness clinic in Emerald Isle called Infused Wellness, and that's how I met Mark and his family, and I'm very honored to be asked to come and speak to you guys tonight. We're going to talk about our healthcare system. We know that it's broken, and how did we get here? Where did we start, and how did we get to where we are today? We're going to talk about how you can be your own advocate, how can you find a good provider, and then I'm going to give you some pointers for things that you can do for yourself that can improve your healthcare status starting tomorrow, regardless of whatever kind of chronic illness you're dealing with. Chronic illness is things that can't be cured, so whatever you're struggling with today, I'm going to give you some pointers for things that you can change and that will have a positive impact on your healthcare. All right, so the first medical school was opened in Philadelphia in 1765. Our country was still kind of young at that point, and we were borrowing everything from Europe. So that's where things started. We still didn't know a whole lot at that point. We were still learning a lot about anatomy and physiology. A lot happened in the mid to late 1800s, scientifically, technologically. The first stethoscope was developed in 1816. Anesthesia was introduced in the 1840s with ether and chloroform and nitrous oxide. We still use nitrous oxide today. You know, it is laughing gas. We could do surgeries, and we had the anesthesia down pat, but we were still having trouble with infections. And so even during the Civil War, we could do surgeries for these guys, and we could get them through it with no pain. But infection was a problem, and so we were still struggling with that in the early 1800s. But then starting in about 1860 through 1880, gentlemen like Joseph Lister and Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, they started working on things like antiseptic technique and germ theory, and it really revolutionized our understanding of infection and hygiene and infectious diseases, and even public health practices like clean water supplies and even things like pasteurizing milk. We started pasteurizing milk in the late 1800s. It actually got mandated to pasteurize milk during World War II, so it was a little while before that was a mandate that we did that. Penicillin and sulfa antibiotics were discovered right around 1930, really close around the same time. So as we developed those in the 1930s and then World War II happened, there was a lot of lives during World War II that were saved because we had just understood more about penicillin and sulfa antibiotics. Imaging technology first started in 1895 when we developed the first X-ray technology. Now we were able to start looking inside the body to see even more, and that was just adding to our knowledge base. We were developing vaccines at that time, smallpox, diphtheria, typhoid, rabies. The smallpox vaccine was actually developed earlier in 1796, and we've been using it since then. And smallpox, by the way, that's the only human infection that has been completely 100% eradicated. There was a big push for that in the 1950s and the 1960s worldwide. And so that has been completely eradicated because of vaccines. I can't say I'm a big fan of all vaccines, but there's a lot of vaccines out there, especially our early ones, that did a lot of good. So how did our modern healthcare system evolve? So I have to introduce you to a gentleman named Andrew Carnegie. And this gentleman, he was born in 1835 in Scotland, and he immigrated to the U.S. with his family when he was a teenager. That's the Carnegie name that you know, the Carnegie family that was very rich. He was known as being a very strategic and aggressive businessman, and he was very involved in controlling all aspects of steel production, from raw materials to transportation to manufacturing. But not only was he a businessman, he was quite a philanthropist too. In 1889, he wrote something called The Gospel of Wealth, and this was an article where he called on all wealthy people to utilize their wealth to help others in a thoughtful and responsible manner. So he was actually a pretty good guy, and in 1901 he sold his company to J.P. Morgan for $500 million. Now that's a lot of money today. Back in 1901, that was a lot of money. So once he sold Carnegie Steel, he really wanted to do even more with that money. as a philanthropist. And so he established the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching with the goal of improving education in the United States. So he came across an educator by the name of Abraham Flexner. And Flexner was an innovative educator. He didn't believe in the strict discipline that we saw a lot in the classrooms. He didn't even give out traditional grades and traditional testing. Well, he came to the attention of Andrew Carnegie, and in 1910, Carnegie commissioned Abraham Flexner to do some studies on education in our medical schools in the United States, and that's where things really began to change. The pros of what's called the Flexner Report are that they standardized medical education in the U.S. Some of the cons, though, were that half of the U.S. medical schools ended up closing because of the Flexner Report that came out in 1910. Some of those schools were the ones who actually supported minorities that were trying to study medical education. Now, another pro was that they were pushing scientific research, which is a wonderful thing. This is the basis of what today we call evidence-based practice. And so you do your research studies, you find the evidence for something that works, and then we put it into practice with people. And it really keeps us from just pulling information out of the air and saying, you know what, I think this sounds like a great idea, let's do this. No, we do research first, we make sure that it's going to work, we get the evidence for it. And that all came from the Flexner Report. But there's a flip side to that as well, because during that time, everything was developing scientifically and technologically. And so critics of the Flexner Report really see this as the demise of holistic care in the United States, because there was so much scientific advancement. That's where they wanted to concentrate their research. Nobody wanted to research all the tried and true methods that have been used for so many years. So then we ask ourselves, how do we fund health care? Hospitals during the 1800s were actually meant for poor. If you had money, you were treated at home, or you went to a private nursing facility where you were treated by a private physician. So the hospitals were really riddled with infection, because this was really before the time that we understood a whole lot about infection and hygiene. And so hospitals was not really where you wanted to go, and they were expensive to run as well. So as things developed, the science and the technology developed, the idea of insurance was born. And in 1929, in Dallas, Texas, the first insurance policy came about. Subscribers paid $6 a year to Baylor University Hospital, who said, if you're one of our subscribers and you get sick, we'll give you 21 days of inpatient care if you've paid your subscription fee. And that's where insurance was born. And then, of course, somebody sees a good idea and they just want to take that and run with it. And more hospitals were realizing this was a way to generate some positive cash flow. Let's get your $6 and your $6 and everybody's $6. Most of you probably won't need that, but when you do, we'll have a lot of good positive cash flow. So then Blue Cross was born in Sacramento in 1932. So the idea with insurance at that time was everything was paid for up front, which meant that the consumer really didn't have any idea about the cost of medical care, and they were very indifferent to what medical care cost. Then in the mid-1930s, the state insurance departments, they wanted to regulate medical insurance in the same way that they regulated other insurances. And the American Hospital Association and the American Medical Association pushed back from this. They didn't want this regulated. They wanted to have the monopoly on this. And so they actually won. And they got their insurance policies that were not regulated by these state agencies. Then these organizations also got the IRS on board to give companies like Blue Cross the charitable organization status, which meant they didn't have to pay taxes. So there's a whole lot more history here. We all know that insurance can be just a big part of what our problems are today in healthcare. I don't even have time to go into all of it tonight, but the basic problem was that the consumer of healthcare became distanced from the purchaser of healthcare. And that's where our disconnect is still with us today. The consumers and the insurance companies. We have to do what they tell us to do. And then, of course, the government gets involved. And in 1965, Medicare was born, and Medicaid and Medicare was born. And, you get the government involved, and that makes it all better, right? So, what's the answer? Do we have an answer to this? How do we make this better? Do we go to a national health care service like the UK has and like Canada has? We already can't trust our government. Our government runs the 3 largest subscription insurance companies in the United States, and that would be Medicare and Medicaid, the VA, and the Indian Health Services. Those are all run by our government, and we know that those are rife with fraud and waste and corruption, so we can't trust our government to take over a national health care service. So what is the answer? We don't have time to figure that out tonight, but we do know that insurance is really part of the fundamental problem, is having insurance companies involved in our health care. Hippocrates said something that I like very much. He said, the best medicine is teaching people to not need it. But there's no money in that. And that's the American way, right, is to make money. So it doesn't make any sense to provide a service where your consumers are not going to continue to need your service. That's a terrible business model here in America. And so that's where we are today. We're at the mercy of the insurance companies who don't see your health as a goal. They just want to make money. So this is where we come to, how do you be your own advocate? You have to do what you can for yourself. You have to educate yourself about your symptoms and your illness, and I would encourage you to even keep a notebook. If you have a chronic illness or multiple chronic illnesses, keep a notebook of everything. I had a patient that came to me several years ago. They brought their 13-year-old daughter to us. She's actually in college now, so I don't get to see her as much. But this mom carried around a notebook that was this thick. She had doctor's visits, she had lab results, and then there was another section in the notebook that had research articles where she took notes. She would learn everything that she could, and she pushed for her daughter's health care. Her daughter went from not being able to attend school because she was so sick. She had some interventions and some surgeries, and she got to the point where she was able to go back to school. She graduated from high school with her friends, and she's in college now because her mom was her advocate, and she fought really hard. You need to learn how to discern where you can get reputable information from. So today we all get information online. How do you know that what you're looking at is good information? Because I can promise you, if you start talking to a provider about some gobbledygook that doesn't make any sense at all, they will laugh at you and they're going to mock you for going and consulting Dr. Google and not listening to an educated provider. So when you're trying to educate yourself, make sure you're looking at a reputable source. And how do you know that? So an article that comes from the National Institute of Health, that's going to be a good source, and the Cochrane Library, that is also a good source. Now, these are research articles. They go very much into depth about all of their studies and how they set up, and so there's lots of numbers and statistics. As a layperson, you can really skip over all that. What you want to look for, you want to look at the introduction paragraph. You can skip over all the numbers, and then you look towards the end for something called the discussion and the conclusion, and that really sums everything up very nicely for you. Another online source, you want to look for something that was written by an expert writer or an expert reviewer. If you see something that has an expert reviewer, it was probably written by a healthcare journalist. This is just a journalist that they write about lots of different things, and so they're not in the medical field. But if it has an expert reviewer, it can be written by a healthcare journalist, and then a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner or someone like that has reviewed it, and that's a good article. A peer-reviewed article is also good. That means it was written by a provider and then reviewed by another provider. So a peer-reviewed article is also very good. Some online sources that I think are pretty good, that spell things out well for the layperson. The Mayo Clinic is a great website. Medscape is good. Medline Plus is good. Be really cautious with WebMD and things like Healthline. So, know who your providers are. So let's talk about the difference between an MD and a DO. So an MD is a medical doctor, a DO is a doctor of osteopathy. They're pretty much interchangeable. Doctors of osteopathy, their training is a bit more holistic than medical doctors, but they all do exactly the same thing. I've been in healthcare 25, 30 years, and I've worked with both MDs and DOs. Honestly, I personally don't see a very big difference. If you can find maybe a general practitioner or primary care provider who is a DO, they may have some more holistic approaches, more so than your MD. Nurse practitioners versus PAs, also they do exactly the same things. They are medical providers, but nurse practitioners or any other advanced practice nurse, we come from a nursing background, and then we go to advanced practice school where we learn the art and the science of everything that we do medical. PAs, which are physician's assistants, yes, they do the same thing that nurse practitioners do, they just don't have that same nursing background. And you can get into PA school even with an English degree. Most of them have degrees like biochemistry or pre-med or something like that, but they don't have that nursing background. My favorite type of a provider is either going to be a DO or a nurse practitioner. Here's some other types of providers that you might see out and about as you're trying to look for someone who's going to help you advocate for your own health. A DC, a doctor of chiropractic. These are very knowledgeable people. They don't just adjust your back. They know quite a bit about how the body works. They have a lot of training on this. The only problem is they're not allowed to practice medicine. So when you see a doctor of chiropractic, they know a lot about what's going on. They can even order imaging, they can order labs, they just can't practice medicine. So if you needed a prescription for something, it's not something that they can do. It's outside their scope of practice. Doctors of naturopathy, same thing. Very knowledgeable about how the body works. They want to try and do everything for you as much as they can from a holistic perspective, supporting the body to heal itself. Let's face it, guys, that's how the Lord made our bodies. The Lord designed our bodies to heal themselves. You break a bone, it heals. You cut your finger, it heals. That's how we were designed. Sometimes we do need a little extra help. So holistically, we can do a lot. Sometimes we need prescriptions, and a doctor of naturopathy typically cannot write those prescriptions. It's a little bit different from state to state. Here in North Carolina, they can't. Registered dietitians and nutritionists, they are excellent sources of information, especially if you want to change something about your nutrition and you're a little bit confused on which direction to go because there's a lot of information out there. Wonderful, wonderful resources. They can even make suggestions about, let's look at some labs. Is your vitamin D low? Is your B12 low? So they can make suggestions to you about what kind of blood work to look at that you can go back to your primary care and say, can we take a look at this, please? I have a registered dietitian who wants to help me. A lot of times, your doctor will be willing to work with you on that, especially if your insurance will pay for those labs, right? And then functional medicine. Now this is my absolute favorite, most favorite type of medicine. Functional medicine providers, they seek to find out the source of your problem. Most medical doctors are more than happy to hand you a pill to fix your problem. Let me write you a prescription, we can fix that problem. Functional medicine wants to know what is the source of your problem, and let's see if we can get rid of your problem. But if we know the source of it, we can treat it better. There's also something called functional dentistry. I don't know if any of you guys have been hearing how terrible root canals are for your health. They're really terrible for your health. A functional dentist can actually work with you if you've had a root canal, or they can work with you to help you try to avoid a root canal. I have somebody down in Wilmington that I actually refer people to. And then there's something called concierge medicine or subscription medicine. So concierge medicine is a way for you to maybe try to avoid the insurance companies. So if you find somebody who does concierge medicine, they may charge you a monthly fee. It might be $200 for a husband and a wife. Let's say you have several kids in the family. They may charge you $300 a month to cover you and your kids, and you get to be seen. They set it out for you. You can have 3 office visits and 3 prescriptions per month for this fee. It's a good way to try to avoid the insurance companies because, of course, once you get the insurance company involved, they're going to try to dictate everything that you do. The bottom line here, though, is that Every provider that went into healthcare, we all did it because we want to help people. And then we find ourselves trapped in a system that is very broken, but we can't fix it as individuals. And until we all kind of band together and try and figure out how do we fix this broken system, we're stuck working with the system that we have. But there are good providers out there that do want to help people, and they want to help you. You just got to find the right one. Okay, how do we help you with your chronic illness? What can you do for yourself, literally starting tomorrow? Well, there's things called modifiable risk factors, and I'm sure you've heard your doctor talk about modifiable risk factors. Anything that you can change, you can do this yourself. The problem is when your doctor talks to you about it, your doctor doesn't tell you how to go about making these changes. They don't explain to you why you should make these changes and why it makes sense, and then they don't help you do it. Let's say a doctor looks at their patient and says you need to lose 50 pounds. Okay, have a good day. They don't help you. They don't tell you how to do it. They don't help you find the right method of losing weight. It's going to be different for every one of us. You need help finding that because it's tough. There's a lot of information out there. But the bottom line is your doctor isn't going to tell you those things because your doctor gets paid to diagnose you. They don't get paid to teach you. That's why you have to be your own advocate. Making changes in your healthcare is entirely up to you. You have to be your own advocate. So what can you do to help yourself with your chronic illness? Well, first of all, let's see what the Bible has to say about that. And by the way, that's one of the things that my husband says that's one of my favorite things. He'll say, what does the Bible say? You'll hear somebody give an opinion about something and he'll say, well, what does the Bible say about that? That's one of my favorite things. So, what does the Bible say about this? Well, if we look at Matthew 7, actually let's back up a little bit because this is the ending of the Sermon on the Mount, which actually starts in Matthew 5. But when you look at the end of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is telling us, if you listen to everything that I've told you, you will be like the wise man who builds his house on a firm foundation. You must build your house on rock. And if you build your house on sand, you're a foolish man. And that's what the Bible says about that. So we've got to figure out, how do we build our house on a firm foundation? How do we build our health on the firmest foundation that we can? 3 changes for you that can make a big impact that I want to talk about: toxin exposure, exercise, and nutrition. And yes, I'm preaching to myself when I say this too. As I'm putting, you're not going to like it. I didn't like it either, and I wrote this, but it's something we all need to hear, and we all need to be reminded of it. Toxin exposure. Your skin is the largest organ in your body, and it is highly absorbent. And everything around us these days is designed to make us sick. There are endocrine disruptors in the form of chemicals, pesticides. Endocrine disruptors do so many horrible things. They mimic hormones, they block hormones, they alter hormone levels, they interfere with our hormone signaling and pathways. These come in the form of pesticides, phthalates, the bisphenol A, that's the BPA, that's the plastic, heavy metals, industrial chemicals, soaps, shampoos, deodorant, laundry detergent, lotion, makeup, food storage. I don't even heat up food in any plastic containers. If I store any food in a plastic container, I let it cool down first. If I heat it up, I put it into something different, not the plastic containers. They're killing us. And if we can learn how to avoid them, we will make ourselves healthier. I've been making my own hand soap and bug spray for years with essential oil bases. The dispensers that I get, I love those foaming hand dispensers. I get those from Amazon. The little spray bottles, the empty spray bottles. You've seen those amber colored bottles, and what they're doing is they're protecting the ingredients in there from UV light, and that's what most essential oils need, is they need to be in a protected bottle. I get those from Amazon. My favorite essential oil company is Plant Therapy. You can use whatever company you love. People love doTERRA. Young Living, there's all kinds of things out there, but these companies have a lot of really great blends, and they've got a bug spray blend that I'll take it, dilute it down. I get these recipes like off of Pinterest and things like this. Very easy to do. Here's my recipe for homemade hand soap. in 2 different size containers, and you can use any essential oil blend. I have an essential oil blend that I call it a cold and flu fighter. I take this to work with me, and I use it at the hospital and the facilities that I go to. Toxin exposures, you also want to consider things like mold exposure, Lyme disease, parasites. Anybody who is on an anti-reflux medication called a PPI, that's a proton pump inhibitor, it's making your body reduce the acid that it produces. Again, back to this thing where the Lord designed our bodies to heal themselves. The acid in our stomach is there for a reason. When you ingest food that has been exposed to parasites and it hasn't been cleaned properly, this can help kill the parasites. But if you don't have enough acid in your stomach, you can actually have a parasitic infection and not know it. And this can manifest in a lot of different ways. Brain fog, fatigue, joint pain, all kinds of things. And there's so many things that can cause those things. It's very difficult to narrow that down. Hormone imbalance, oh my gosh, what hormone imbalance does to your body. Strokes, memory loss, depression, dementia, it affects relationships. Hormone imbalance is terrible. And I was talking just a moment ago about all those toxins and chemicals that are hormone disruptors. So what you should do, this is where a good functional medicine provider is going to come in. They're going to run tests that your Western trained primary care providers have never even heard of. They're going to sit down, they're going to listen to your symptoms, and they're going to go through, okay, let's look at this, let's look at this. They're going to think about parasites. They can test you for all of that. Okay, let's talk about exercise. Walking is one of the best forms of exercise that there is. I'm not asking anybody to go out there and train for a marathon. I am not asking anybody to go out and train for the Olympics. Get out and walk a little bit. Walk to your mailbox to go get your mail. When was the last time you did that? Walk a mile. I promise you, it's tough today, but if you walk a mile every day, by the time next week rolls around, you're going to have more stamina and you're going to hurt less, and you're going to be doing it faster, and then you're going to be walking even longer. Now, some of you may have trouble with your mobility. That's okay. If you can find a gym in your area that has an indoor pool, you can do swimming. Swimming is a fantastic alternative to exercise when your mobility is really limited. You can even swim just hanging onto the side of the pool and kicking your legs. A lot of these gyms that have an indoor pool, they will have water aerobics classes. So not only is this going to get you out of your house, it's going to introduce you to some other people too, and that's good for your mental health as well. Physical therapy bands. Let's say your health is really impacted and getting around is just very difficult. Even physical therapy bands, you can do them sitting in a chair. You can do them sitting on the floor. You can work your arms. You can work your feet and your legs. There's a lot you can do to improve your strength, even if your mobility is not good. All right, let's talk about nutrition. Wow, there's so many different types of diets out there. It's overwhelming. You've got the Mediterranean, the keto, the paleo, you've got the DASH, the GAPS, you've got low carb, moderate carb, you've got gluten-free, dairy-free, flexitarian, Ornish. I don't even know what Ornish is when I came across that. You've got vegan, you've got South Beach, you've got anti-inflammatory. The list is endless. How do you know where to start? And this is where very thoughtful prayer comes in. You have to pray about this and let the Lord tell you what is right for you. Because what's right for me may not be right for you, and what's right for you may not be right for him. So you've got to pray about what is going to be the best thing for you. And you can consult a registered dietitian or a nutritionist, and they can help you find a place to start. It can be overwhelming to find a place to start, but you got to start somewhere. One of my favorite things is the anti-inflammatory diet, and I'm trying to work on that. My husband and I are trying to work on that. But the most important thing with any nutrition plan that you do is that it absolutely has to be sustainable. If it's not sustainable, you're not going to continue doing it. You're going to do it. You're going to take a 30-day challenge, and you know what? You are counting the days, and when day 30 hits, you're going to go out and get you a Snickers and some ice cream. I mean, if it is not sustainable, you are never going to stick with it. So find something that is sustainable. Low carb, it's not sustainable for me. So the bottom line is, injured tissues heal from nutrients. They don't heal from medications. Medications help control and mask symptoms, but injured tissues need good nutrition to heal, and that's building your house on a firm foundation and not on sand. Nutrition gives our bodies the foundation to repair and regenerate and heal itself. Gut health, good gut health also can help relieve symptoms of depression. 90% of our serotonin is actually made in the gut. Any of you that have ever struggled yourselves with depression or know someone who has struggled from depression, you know how important serotonin is in that struggle and fight with depression. 90% of our serotonin is made in the gut. And if your nutrition is not good, all of that is impaired, and you are going to struggle with depression. You should consider eating organically. These are foods that are made without pesticides or grown without pesticides. Non-GMO foods as well. Consider this. So genetically modified foods, this is not what our bodies need, and this is not what we're accustomed to. Think about this. If it comes in a package, think twice about picking it up off the shelf and putting it in your grocery cart. We need to be cooking more. We need to be preparing whole foods prepared at home. We got to start cooking again. And just I'm going to do a quick overview here on reading nutrition labels. Here's a couple of labels right here. So I told you that I'm trying to go with an anti-inflammatory diet, and that means cutting out sugar. Guys, sugar is horrible for our bodies. It's terrible. Anybody who develops cancer and is looking into a holistic cancer care, that's the first thing they have you do is to cut out sugar. Cancer feeds on sugar. Inflammation, sugar just feeds the inflammation in our bodies, and so many of us struggle with inflammation. That is the source of so many of our issues, of our medical issues. So here's a picture here of some strawberry jam. I've got regular jam, and I've got a brand called Skinny Girl. They've actually got a lot of good products. If you look at the label, we got to learn how to read our labels. The first thing you want to look at is your serving size. Look at your calories, look at your fat, look at your carbohydrates. You can get your total net carbs. You can subtract your fiber from your total carbs, and that's your total net carbs. Your body converts carbohydrates into sugar. So if you're trying to go with a low sugar diet, keeping your carbs low is also a good idea as well. It's tough when you love bread, because I do love bread. Here's another picture of ketchup. Y'all, ketchup is a sugar bomb. So here's some regular ketchup, and here's some sugar-free ketchup from a chef called G. Hughes. He's got a great line of sugar-free stuff. He's got great sugar-free barbecue sauce, because I was trying to figure out, how do I make barbecue sauce with tomato ketchup that's just a sugar bomb? Well, he's got good ketchup, and he's got good barbecue sauces, so now I don't have to make my own barbecue sauce anymore. But when you look at the differences in regular ketchup versus this sugar-free ketchup, it's amazing, the difference in the calories and the difference in the carbs. Here is some really great keto bread that we've started buying. Now, I'm not a big fan of the keto sliced bread, and it's expensive. It's about $10 a loaf, and it's kind of thick. It's kind of toothsome. If you like a toothsomeness, you might like that, but it's not my favorite, especially to make a piece of toast and put some strawberry jam on it. It's a little crunchy. But we did find some keto hamburger buns that are made by the Arnold Company. We can even find these at our local food line, which I don't think they always have such great choices, but we can even find these at our local food line. Same thing, these buns have like 3 net carbs, so I've actually gotten to the point, so if we're gonna cook a steak and I want some bread to go along with our steak, I'll take these keto buns, a little bit of butter, lemon and pepper seasoning, and that's our bread, low carb. So, in closing, I want to just sum up everything here. Number 1, learn how to be your own advocate. Find a provider that aligns with your philosophy, and take responsibility for your own health by building everything on a firm foundation. And that starts with nutrition and exercise and trying to reduce all the toxins that we're exposed to every single day. And as always, keep the Lord Jesus in your life, and if you seek Him, He will show you what you need to do with your life and to try and get your health back. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I appreciate your time.